Welcome to Voice with Vielka, the podcast dedicated to the ongoing quest for finding how to best teach kids to sing with confidence. I'm your host, Vielka, and I'll share my experiences as a performer, educator, founder, and mother for the last 20 years here in the heart of New York City. Thank you for joining me as I share with you the amazing people, practices, and talking points to help us grow together as singers, educators, entrepreneurs, and human beings. So, welcome to today's podcast. I am so excited because I have a very special guest with me today, someone who really helped change my life, who really had a serious impact. And I want to start by saying I've had this really love-hate relationship with running. I was that kid growing up who had the inhaler in hand, and just the thought of going for a run seemed treacherous and would actually make me not be able to breathe. So I had to take my inhaler before I even thought about running. That said, I was an athlete. Baseball was actually my main sport. And needless to say, many years later, I never ever thought that I would even have the desire to run for fun or run for a distance and do any kind of race. However, after watching the New York City Marathon in person, I was so floored and inspired, and it really just hit me that every day there are people out there who make the impossible possible. And what really struck me too was that the majority of the runners running this race were not the elite athletes. They were what appeared to be quote unquote regular people. And I thought, if these people can do it, so can I. And that was the beginning of a very long journey for me. And Scott Cohen, who is our guest today, was really the first person that helped to change some of that hate that I had towards running into love, because he was so inspiring. And I just can't wait to share him and his story with you today, because you're going to see he's so inspiring, his journey. And to be able to share that as a coach for me when I was just barely starting out, training for my first half marathon. This was back in the race was July of 2008. So the training that led up to that. So lucky that my friend Rachel, thank you Rachel if you're out there, introduced me to Lend a Hand India, an amazing organization. You should definitely check them out, who had Scott Cohen here on board to train some of us for a really great cause. And there is so much of a background here that rather than give it to you all up front, I'm sort of going to drip the content. But just to let you know that Scott is an incredible endurance athlete and coach. He's just amazing. I could talk about any one of the things on his resume here for days on end. I feel like you have many books within you here, Scott. But just to give you a couple lines, just for some context, Scott has competed in over 50 marathons and 10 ultra marathons, including South Africa's Comrades Marathon, one of the top 5 toughest races in the world. He's competed in 9 Ironman triathlons worldwide. He was president of New York's premier running club, the New York Flyers, and he's just been an incredible, empowering coach and inspiration to so many people, from beginners and more beyond that. So anyway, I know you might be asking yourself, why am I bringing on this incredible endurance athlete to a show that's for, voice teachers and teachers of young singers? And I'll tell you why, because singers are athletes. We are vocal athletes, and it is an endurance game. So there is so much here. And honestly, firsthand, I learned more about myself and singing and teaching from running my first marathon, which did happen in 2010. I learned more from that journey than I did in some ways from music school. So I invite you all to just have an open mind as you listen to this conversation and help make some of the dots get connected here. Connect the dots for yourself. I'll try to join as well, but just thinking about the fact that Scott is this incredible elite athlete and coach, and the secrets of his success will also be the secrets of our success as we are, getting the best out of ourselves and the best out of our students. So, Scott, a very wholeheartedly awesome, warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What an endearing introduction. I'm reaching for the Kleenex. That is so lovely. I love you. And oh my gosh, I certainly miss those days. I moved out of New York City. It's been several years now, but to this day, I still miss, meeting up with friends and, people that I feel like I have had some influence on in our playground, Central Park.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm so grateful to have you here meeting up with us today. So tell us where you are now. And really, I want to start sort of at the beginning of your story because I think so much, of what interests me when I'm learning about people is really, where are they from? What's their background? And what got you from where you started to this incredible journey of where you are now?
It may not be unlike many other people. I was at a pretty low point in my life. I was overweight. I was smoking a pack of Marlboro Lights a day. My perspective towards my life wasn't very healthy. I wasn't a very healthy person in general back then.
Scott, we have to stop right here. I am shocked. I did not know this was part of your story. This is not what I expected you to be starting with right now. Oh my gosh. So give me a little context here. Tell me, sort of where did you grow up? Where were you born? And then what is this point in your life that you're talking about? Because,
Sure, yeah.
wow.
No, I will be very forthcoming, very candid, because I look back, with pride. Originally, I was born in Manhattan, but I am a kid from Queens. I spent my youth growing up in Eastern Queens, and until I went to school in the city. I was going to FIT, and so I moved back. I moved into Manhattan, and I I was a young guy. I mean, I was 22 when I moved into the city, and I probably attached myself to all the wrong influences. I was a club kid. I'm 62 now, but we're going back 40 some odd years, and I was just a young kid going to clubs, having a great time, staying out till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then showing up at work, on very, very little sleep. I was not living my best life. I was just living a life, really. I think more influenced by a kid from Queens who was young and was really just taken with everything that the city had to offer, and probably lived a little bit too much of the wild life. Um, and again, it really wasn't until I was about 32. So this would have been 1992. To this day, I don't know why, but that proverbial light bulb just went off in my head saying that you got to try running. I think very similar to your story, as well as a lot of other people, when you mentioned the love-hate relationship. I didn't have a love-hate relationship. I hated it. I hated every step. Again, I was smoking. I was at least 15 pounds overweight. Wasn't happy in my career. I was in financial services, and I was really selling intangible products. I wasn't terrible at it, but I didn't love it. And I think that you really need to, if not love what you do, you've really got to form a very personal attachment, to it. Having said that, I hated every step that I took. I was coughing, you know, all the time. And when I wasn't coughing, I was probably cursing, running, like what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But again, I can't tell you to this day why that light bulb went off. I also can't tell you why I didn't quit, but I did not quit. For some reason, I just kept at it. And that's when I noticed, a very broad, change. Not only on a physical plane, I started to lose the weight. The choice between continuing to smoke or develop my running became very much crystallized. It was easy. I just gave up cigarettes, and I started to just find my stride. It may sound a bit cliched, and I apologize for that, but what I initially hated, I really started to form a very personal, deep-rooted attachment and love for. And I think it's quite possibly the same way for people who develop a yoga practice. They take yoga. If it's not a religion, it's something that is very sacred, to them, and they develop a very real and very personal relationship, with yoga. They're called yoginis, and they develop a yoga practice. I feel that I've also developed the same type of relationship. I've developed a running practice, which I nurture, to this day. It's gotten me through a lot. It continues to get me through a lot, and I'm forever grateful that that light bulb did go off. And I proceeded to keep putting one foot in front of the other to see where it might lead. It's opened many, many, many doors. It's introduced me to so many people. Couldn't be more grateful.
I mean, there's so much here that I could unpack and get into with you. And of
Makes me
course,
emotional.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is really why I wanted to have you on, is because to experience it is where you really tap into a deeper knowing and understanding of the power of the practice. And I feel like, especially as a singer, and a runner and a yogi, I totally get, you know, the benefits. But I'm really curious for you, and especially with where you have gone from this beginning of hating running, which totally relate, to then segueing into it sounds like it kind of became part of who you were. It became a practice. It became something that you, a new identity, maybe, is that fair to say? And then from that to go make the jump to these marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans. I mean, first off, for our listeners who may not be runners, maybe share a little bit with us. First off, what then transitioned you from this, just getting into a steady practice? Let's start with, what were the benefits? Because I know how hard it is in the beginning, and as a teacher, as a performer, and with students, there are so many times where, it's rainy, it's cold out, I overate, I whatever, and I just don't feel like I'm in the mood to practice today. So how do we, get over the humps, and what were the benefits that were coming out where it drove you and motivated you to keep going and make it shift from something new that you're trying out to actually, okay, this is a practice and a lifestyle now?
It's a very good question, but it's also a difficult question, I think, to answer. You know, in the beginning, it really, it wasn't really about the benefits. It was really just more about the developments. It was about overcoming some of the hurdles. I've often used an expression that I wish I could bottle my best runs. I can't. Um, I have, woken up and I have been so eager, so excited to go for runs, only to be disappointed, by the actual quality, I'll say, of the run. Conversely, I have had to drag myself sometimes out of my apartment, out of my bed, um, whether it's been a cold day or a really hot day, which we have a lot of here in Austin. um, Self motivation. But quite often, those times where I did not feel like running at all, it was the last thing I really wanted to do. I've come back with the broadest smile on my face that, oh my goodness, that was one of the best feeling runs I've ever had. Everything just clicked. I felt like I was running on air. My breathing was great. The way my body, moved through time and space, was wonderful. So again, you can't bottle, running. You're going to overcome hurdles. You're going to overcome obstacles, with perhaps the greatest obstacle being your own mindset, holding you back. So I really needed to work through the development phase, if you will, of running before I started to really see the benefits, whether that was what we call in the United States a PR, a personal record, or in the UK, a PB, a personal best. And, the greatest benefit I think that I've received is just empowerment. One of the most underrated human qualities that I think a lot of us just never really get to experience. I experienced it when I finally crossed the finish line in 1994 of my first New York City Marathon, where again, I had to overcome a lot of adversity the year before, a lot of personal, adversity. And I bet that when you cross the finish line, you as well, they put the medal around your, around your neck, and like, I've just completed a marathon.
That was really like a bucket list moment for me that I really didn't know if I never had that dream. And then once I had the dream, it was like, yeah, it's a real moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny because I see you with such different eyes, because you're the coach and you've done it so many times and all this. It's such a gift to hear about your first time and how meaningful it was. I know for me, I felt invincible in that moment. Yeah. And then let's talk about the fact that you've done so many. I have a couple questions here. One is what do you think about when you run? Do you listen to music or not? Where is your mind? Because these are, I mean, multiple hours of running, not to mention the how many hours of running go into the training before the actual run itself of the race, so where is your mind? You started to talk about mindset, but where is your mind during all of these hours?
Again, it's a very good question. I mean, I'll do my best to answer it in the most honest and forthcoming way that I can. Again, I started running in the early 90s, 1992, did my first marathon in 1994, which was the 25th anniversary of the New York City Marathon. Back then, we didn't have, at least in the early 90s, I forget when the Walkman came out. To answer your question, I defined myself back then as a running purist. I didn't run I didn't run to music until the original iPod debuted, which I think was like 2004, some 2003, 2004, around there. And again, from a coaching perspective, I would tell people that please, try not to run with music if you're starting out. You need to hear your breathing. You need to identify with how you're breathing, and that could be skewed. If you're listening to a really good raging, tune that will definitely pump you up. But again, if you're a novice, I would still suggest you try and do at least 50% of your running without any music whatsoever. You need to use your arms, both for stability and just for the swing that you need, for to run effectively. My mind, in the beginning, for some reason, my mind would really just be so focused on what I was doing. Then I noticed that my mind started to become a human calculator. I started to do math in my mind, which was with regard to my splits. If for anybody who's not familiar with the term, your splits, that simply means where you're at, with each mile you complete. Whether it's a 5 kilometer, a 3.1 mile road race or trail race, or the marathon, or beyond the marathon, as you mentioned, Comrades is a 56-mile, race. That's a lot. That's a lot that your mind has to really wrap itself around, a lot of numbers. So,
Okay, I need to pause, Scott. There's so much here. 56 miles? Really?
yeah.
Oh
Yeah, 11
my
hours.
gosh. So
Yeah.
that's the equivalent of like 2 marathons?
Well, it's more. 26.2 times 2 would be 50, what,
Yeah,
50,
52.
52 and change.
That's
Yeah, Comrades is quite an event. Yeah,
wow.
it's a great. I mean, I look back on it, with such love and such wonder. Like in the New York City Marathon, the year that you ran, think about all the people, that the crowd support. People yelling. They're yelling your name. They're yelling other people's names. It's the biggest event as far as road running, in South Africa. Um, the course changes each year. It's called the up year or the down year. I did the 85th anniversary run, and we started at about 5 o'clock in the morning in Durban, and then we finished in Pietermaritzburg, unless I have it backwards, which I might. We started in Pietermaritzburg, and we finished the race in Durban. But it's quite an event.
As you were talking about, first off, music wasn't really so much an option, which I'm so used to all of the technology we have now. I sort of forgot. Oh, that's right. There were times before before all these products. Anyway, the purest idea, I just want to connect the dots for some of our listeners, in that that's actually a lot of the philosophy that I have in teaching singing with my students. Is, traditionally we would be practicing and singing as our teacher or accompanist is playing with us. But when I work with a student, I really like to just have it be just their voice. And I just made that connection with what you were saying of, you're just putting your mind into your breathing, into your form, your running, that you can really become very aware of what your body is doing and feeling it. And the same is true for my singers and myself, that when I'm practicing, there's something about running, just like there's something about running with a friend, maybe that's a little different vibe and maybe your attention goes otherwise. And I'm curious to know if you do ever run with other people, but when you're practicing solo, to just really focus. And for me, one of the highlights was to have a student say, you know what? I said, would you like to sing with accompaniment or just on your own? And she said, I really just want to do it by myself because then I can really hear. I can really hear, where I'm at and my voice and make adjustments, because it does kind of cover and block out a little bit. And of course it feels good. And as performers, we do end up singing with an accompaniment, but just wanted to note that that's really interesting because, yeah, runners think about running while they're running.
Well, they do, but I would also think about, I hope this is helpful because I think it's very personal. Um, I think success in running, in terms of what you're thinking about, try and let go of any stress that or negativity that you might have going on in your life. And I think it's fair to say that most of us, certainly we've got adversity, we've got stressors, and instead try and just hone in on something that is positive or something that you're looking forward to. It could be a vacation, a holiday somewhere. It could be meeting a friend and catching up. I would try and pick something that was more uplifting. It was just simply the opposite of bringing me down or angering me, stressing me, causing any type of anxiety. I do think that's important to at least share because that's been a big part of my running success. When I'm out there solo, I do want to try and pivot my thoughts to something that is more positive. And yes, the social aspect of running can never be, overestimated. Running with a friend or more than one people, a group, as we would do, with our marathon training, is obviously very, very good, very beneficial.
Let's talk about this a little bit too, because especially in our line of work, so many families that I meet and singers have this idea of, well, I just want to train solo. And obviously there are many benefits to that. And traditionally that's, been what's, been touted a little bit more than say a group. However, I've found that there are so many benefits of being in a group, and that actually training in a group gives you more of what you're talking about, this positive energy, this feeding off of each other, especially with your background with the New York Flyers. Tell us a little bit more about what those benefits are of training in a group that you see.
I think first and foremost, for me, I think the biggest benefit is if you're engaged in a discussion, you're not thinking about, the gruel of running, of the dynamics of continuing to shift your weight and your feet making a foot strike, an impact, whether it's on concrete, asphalt, or even better, a softer surface like a trail. If your mind is diverted, you're not thinking about, again, the I don't want to say monotony, again, just the the gruel of sweating and continuing to push your weight in a forward direction.
Well, I think that's a great point. And I'm just making connections with my own work as you talk, and that, Yeah, I mean, essentially, we're just repeating a movement over and over again as singers also. And it's sort of like a varied terrain. I was thinking about how singing a song, for example, is like running a course, right? And each course has its different terrain, hills or flat, or you're in nature or you're on concrete, or there's this little journey from the beginning to the end. And same with singing, that we have this vocal gymnastics, these acrobatics that we're doing from the beginning to the end, and that it's an emotional journey too. It's physical, it's emotional, it's really it's a whole body and soul kind of experience. And so as you're kind of out there and you're running and you're doing these courses, I'm wondering about this feat that you told me that you did, which I just want to get this right here. I'm going to get it phrase by phrase here correctly and look at your words, because unbelievable. Your double in quotes here, which was completing the London Marathon on a Sunday and then immediately flying to Boston, which is insane, to finish the marathon there 30 hours later and just 7 minutes slower than London.
I exaggerate. I had 2 hours to catch my flight.
And Boston is supposed to be such a really grueling course, right?
Boston is, yeah. I mean, it's the coveted, race that a serious runners, certainly need to qualify for it. And it took me 7 attempts to
Wow.
qualify. So, hence the story. I had signed up. The whole thing started. It came out of just a very offbeat discussion I had with a friend. We were talking about, like challenges in marathon running, and I think that we stumbled upon, like, I wonder if like back-to-back marathons could be done either domestically in the United States, but then somehow it came up. I lived in London for several months, so the discussion started out like, I wonder if it's possible to do the London Marathon, and if there's a flight available to get you into Boston in time for the race Monday morning. It's Patriots Day in Boston. It's a holiday, as it has been for well over 130 years now, I think. So I had qualified for Boston in Philadelphia in 1997. So I had only been running for 5 years. So it took me 5 years to qualify. I ran a 3:14, 3 hours and 14 minutes in Philadelphia. I needed to run under 3 hours and 15 minutes based on my age group. Yeah, based on, so in 1997, I was 37. And so 35 to 40, I think you needed a 3:15 or better. So I ran a 3:14. I started this. So now we jump forward to 1999, and I started to look at flights. And it just all worked out, I think British Airways had a flight. So I did the London Marathon in 3 hours and 35 minutes. Went back to the hotel. I had 2 hours. I went to to Heathrow in London, got on, and then with the time change, I arrived in Boston at 1 o'clock in the morning, got on the T, their subway system, got to the hotel at about 2 a.m. My friend who, I initially talked about this challenge, he picked up my number at the expo in Boston, so it was waiting for me. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning before I got to sleep. We had to wake up at like 6:30 or 7. I fell asleep at the Athletes Village in Boston and told them just to wake me up. Meanwhile, I was the talk of the village. Word started circulating that guy over there, he just he just did London yesterday, and yeah, I think I was interviewed on Fox Sports. Anyway, I was hurting like hell through the first 10 kilometers of Boston. The pain started to subside. Again, my mind was so focused on completing this. I finished Boston only 7 minutes slower, 3:42.
It's unbelievable.
So it can be done.
So your mind is just in the place, you're all in, this is happening. Come whatever, you're just going to do this. Like, where is your mind? Because especially when you're in so much pain, you have such little sleep. How do you push through?
I just said I've got a job to do. I've completed one. Every fiber of my legs is killing me right now, but you're just so focused. And again, the pain actually started to subside, and I started just getting into a very comfortable stride. No music. Again, this is no music in those days whatsoever. The miles started to click off. I just stayed focused. In Boston, the first half of the Boston Marathon is relatively flat. It's not that difficult. It's the second half where you're finding the hills, the Newton Hills, for instance, Heartbreak Hill. I just kept pushing through. I never thought about quitting. With each mile that would go by, I was just that much closer to finishing my goal. And I still have a great photograph, a black and white, of somebody that took in the hotel room of me holding up both bibs, which are really right up in that wall there. They're over there. Of the completion of both the London and the Boston Marathon. Yeah, that was only eclipsed by my 50th birthday celebration when I got into the 85th anniversary of Comrades. That was on May 30th, 2010. But on May 1st, 2010, I did an inaugural Ironman in St. George, Utah, that had a 1/3 dropout rate.
Wow.
One third of the people dropped out.
Spell out for us what's in an Ironman.
So this is in St. George, Utah, and the Ironman started with a 2.4-mile swim in a reservoir in St. George. But the problem was that the water temperature was freezing. This was May 1st. It hadn't warmed up enough yet. A lot of people came out of the water with hypothermia.
Oh my God.
I just did the swim, the 2.4-mile swim. Then you get on the bike and you're so freezing from the water. It took a while for, you couldn't even feel your fingers. And then you had a 112-mile bike ride through a very, very difficult bike course that had a switchback going up into these hills. It was the only Ironman I had to get off the bike and walk up a hill. But I finished the bike, the 112 miles, and then all that was left was the marathon. And again, this is the only Ironman that had me finishing at night. Um, it took me 14 hours and 20 minutes, but I got to tell you, out of all 9 Ironmans, this is probably the one that I'm most proud of, because again, it had about a 28% dropout rate. I did it, and then 29 days later, found myself in South Africa, getting ready to run my 56 mile. So it wasn't a back to back, but it was pretty extraordinary.
Oh, it's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. So
I
you're
mean, just
talking to a crazy person.
it's unbelievable and so inspiring. And the dropout rate. I mean, and I love the story that you shared about having to walk up the hill because everybody has these moments where it's just so hard, where we have to push through in some way, physically or emotionally. With a bunch of performers, right? I mean, what we do in our art is so it's really hard. It's really hard. And talk about a dropout rate. I mean, it's really hard to make it, whatever that means. And if you really choose this path where you're going to be singing or performing, and it's really your calling in life, you face a lot of adversity, and so I really want to kind of whittle down a little bit more, especially when you're coaching, because I think it's one thing, yourself, and obviously you've mastered your mind and yourself to the point where you're able to get through these just unbelievable feats. I mean, I really can't believe how much you have done and are continuing to aspire to do. And then, the mastery of self is so much. How do you then pass on in a way to somebody who's just beginning or really at that hard spot? So maybe if you can just share a few phrases or strategies, a few tips of what you would tell somebody when you're coaching them. I mean, I know for me, it was so simple in the beginning because I had this, I'm going to do this, the half marathon. That was my goal at the time. And you're like, don't worry about the miles, just, start with time. And that for some reason really just clicked. It made it more of a freeing of my mind. It gave me a lot more room to just experience rather than the weight of this kind of goal I was putting on myself. So I'm curious, what other ways do you help the athletes that you coach? What are some tips that you can share with us?
Yeah, I remember that, and I think I had said just I wanted it to be really just more an investment in time. Get away from the numbers, in terms of, I've got to go out there in Central Park, and the coach is telling me I've got to complete 6 miles. I'd rather you just focus on just the time, free your mind. Don't worry about any specific number that I might attach, because I remember also I would on the schedule just have it as just a time, based activity. To answer your question, I'm not sure I can speak for other people other than myself. Again, when I was in my 20s, right up until I started running, I didn't think I was good at anything. I had a very defeatist mindset. I had a very frightened mindset. I don't think I was an introverted individual, but I wasn't much of a risk taker. I probably had more fear than I had a willingness to break through. So again, I can't be more specific and more grateful than by saying that running has really allowed me to maybe come out of the shell, so to speak. It's allowed me to find out that, what, I am good, at something finally. It's success. It takes time. I didn't love it right away. I had to really push through, you know. I couldn't reach those high notes. All right, just to maybe offer, some type of analogy. I didn't believe in myself. It took time for me to believe in myself and my ability. There's an expression that running is like 90% mental and 10% physical. There is a grain of truth, to that, because really it's your mind that is going to take you from mile 1 to mile 2 into mile 26.2. Your mind, the strength of your mind, the confidence that your mind is giving your body the ability to focus and follow through. I can only just offer the advice that you may not love it at the start. It may be the most grueling thing that you're going to undertake. Maybe you hate the sound of your voice. I know I hate the sound of my voice. But in time, with a bit of patience, with a bit of commitment, and with a bit of wonder, it could take you, places. You might find that you've got a gift. That gift, it may not be right in front of you. You might have to push a door, open, not with one hand, but it might take, both hands for you to find what's on the other side of the door. You're worth it. You're worth the push. You're worth the investments, in the time. There's always going to be obstacles. To this day, I still have to have a silent argument in my mind as to why I need to push my butt out the door. But I tell myself that I know that if I do, the reward of some type, is going to be there. It may not be the greatest run, but it'll be done. And it'll be something that I've at least done. I've pushed through whatever level of adversity, just to complete what I set out to do. And I've got to believe, as a singer, especially in the beginning, you have to overcome so much. So,
Well, I'm so inspired. I feel like you really hit upon the absolute reason why this work is so important to me, which is it's really about that journey within yourself to go from, especially if you're in a place that's not positive to start with, and then to journey to find your inner strength and commitment and the reward that really only you can give yourself, right? Like, this is something that is so hard earned that all the money in the world can't buy this, right? This is something that you really have to face your own fears, like you said, your own obstacles, and get your mind to the place where you know that it is worth it and that you come out stronger and more confident in the end. And that's such a gift that you have given yourself and then you've given to others. And I'm so, so grateful that you were here today to share this message. And really, it's exactly what I feel like as voice teachers, at least for myself, that's my mission, is to really help bring out the best in others. And everyone has their special something inside. And it may not even be singing. However, the act of practicing and singing or running or whatever, it's the act of practice that actually sort of lets the light come out, and you make these discoveries. So inspiring.
At the end of the day, you can be your greatest hero.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Scott, I'm so inspired by everything that you've done. I'm ready to go figure out, okay, what's going to be my next my next goal to motivate me to really get running again. So I'll be thinking about that. But before we go, I want to ask you just a few sort of rapid fire questions and talk about this little mini playlist. Yes, just a few sort of wrap up things here. So I asked for a little mini playlist inspired by Brene Brown's podcast, where she asks people for their top, songs and what it says about them. So your 5 songs that you shared were "Path of Love," "New Gold Dream," "Rise," "Fade into You," and "Once Twice Melody." What does this little mini playlist say about you, Scott?
Um, I once heard an expression that music is a reflection of images. Um, all of those songs speak to my heart. They make me feel, and they, for whatever reason, they're empower. Again, it comes back to empowerment. Um, each one of those songs in its own special way, whether it's a lovely melody, or a hard driven, message, they're all different songs. They have, again, they've got different lyrics, they've got different melodies, they have different messages, and each one of them, you can say that, I think, just about maybe any tune, or almost, any song, that will make you move, that will make you feel, that will make you think, and that will make you reflect on the image that that particular song, may give off, to you. One of the songs, "Rise," has a lyric, "May the road rise with you." It's just such a great, I think it's a great lyric. It's a lyric that I would wish, upon you. May the road rise with you. So I don't know. I've got tons of songs, on Spotify. And you asked me, I think, for a few. I looked. Those have been 5 of the songs. 3 of them have been recently. I've been running to recently, but again, I still try and run once a week with nothing, just me and the sounds of nature. Most of the running I'm doing now, I'm very fortunate here in Austin. I've got a lot of trails that I could just basically get out to and hear birds, hear the occasional deer, snorting.
Oh, that's amazing. Well,
It's
I'm
fun.
not
Yeah.
surprised. I have to say, I was listening through your playlist this morning and I was like, oh, this sounds like Scott. And that, it was very upbeat, some of these, very positive, optimistic energy. And when I got to Rise, I was really like, oh, I was also really struck by the lyrics and just the sense of overcoming, so there's such great picks. I really enjoyed them. What would be one thing that you wish you could tell sort of your younger self, like if that you wish that you would have known then?
Wow. Gee, I'm really not sure. I'd say to keep an open mind and broaden an open mind and be accountable. Yeah. Take responsibility. Uh, I think when you're in your 20s, the party never seems to end. When you hit your 30s, the party is still going in full swing. But I probably would say to my younger self, keep more of an open mind. Don't be so closed. And maybe I was more in my 20s, I probably didn't have that. In my 20s, to be very honest, I was just much more foolish, much more reckless, both with my time, with relationships, with friendships, there's regret, and I think as you get older, that's, I think, where the accountability comes in, the ability to look back on your past and reckon with it and just try and make improvements as you move forward into, your future. And again, I think running to a degree has really helped, me with that. It's helped me become more grounded as an individual. So
It's hard to know. I think rather than regrets, I think it's like you can appreciate even more because of course it's wonderful to be open-minded and have a sense of accountability and you want to encourage that. And if you were always had that, I think, there's something about the sense of overcoming, right? This has been a lot of this conversation today is that to not have the thing, whatever the thing is, and then to overcome it and achieve it and earn it, it's a much deeper level of understanding and reward. So
just a brief aside, we should really give a shout out, to Lend a Hand India. It's a charity. It's based in Mumbai. But we talked about the empowerment that running can give you, finishing a marathon. Lend a Hand India, that's really what they do for kids, for kids that grow up impoverished, nutritionally impoverished, just extremely growing up, with very, very little. Lend a Hand India provides schools that, teach these kids skill sets. Those skill sets equip these children with the empowerment that they're going to take into the next stage of their life. So it's really quite a way to give back.
thank you so much, Scott. Yeah, a huge shout out to Lend a Hand to
Yeah.
India. Absolutely. And of course, I'm all about empowering kids. It's a real, lifelong mission for me. So we'll be sure to include that with the notes so that people know where to go if they're able to contribute or just learn more. It's a really wonderful organization and the work they're doing is super impactful and
They're still doing it,
still
to
doing
this
it.
day.
It's amazing. Yeah. So we're ready for the rapid fire. Okay. Some of these are, a little singing based, but we'll just tweak them for you. But I'm curious, especially because we didn't talk about you and singing at all, but that's okay. Maybe another day. So singing is blank, fill in the blank. What's singing?
Singing is wonderful,
Love it.
especially if you can do it.
Well, if it's just like if you can walk, you can run. If you can talk, you can sing. So, yeah, we can do that.
Or I'll say singing is a gift.
It is a gift, and it's a gift that's available to all of us. So, it's definitely a gift. It's been a huge gift for me, for sure. What about teaching? Teaching is blank, fill in the blank.
Again, teaching is a gift.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful opportunity to bestow, to influence, to fortify, and to impart. I bet that in your life you've had at least one teacher that has stood out. I know I do, and we remember them to this day because of something they said or some influence that they've had.
Love that. Absolutely. Okay. You're nervous walking on stage. And for you, perhaps this is walking onto the chorus or getting ready. What's the first thing you do?
I've always had a sort of like a motto. You say walking on stage. Before I'm going to get in the water with a couple of thousand other people that are going to be bashing my my head and kicking me in my face or whatever. I used to say to myself, it's showtime, made famous by, I think, Bob Fosse.
Love it. That's gold. Wonderful. Okay, you're home alone. What piece do you love to perform, or in your case, it could be just listening to, when no one's listening, and why?
I don't think this is going to resonate with anybody but me, but again, I'm a child of the 80s. I went to every club in Manhattan in the 80s. I to this day I still geek out on 80s music, and at least one of those songs, or two of them, are circa the 80s. So I just love 80s music.
Well, I love 80s music too. I think, I mean, how can you not? What's an example of something ordinary you find extraordinary that you're grateful for?
Since moving out of the concrete jungle, since moving out of Manhattan, and moving, to lovely Austin, the biggest gift, clearly has been a reconnection, with nature, being outside. Hiking has become probably my number one, go-to. And while every day I see something ordinary, whether it's an owl in a tree or a deer leaping, through a forest canopy, to me, it's extraordinary, in terms of the connection, that I have. Because again, having spent over 3 decades in the city, I really rarely got to see that. So, being here for several years, it hasn't gotten old. It's still a wonderful thing. Not that recently, but last year I was doing a trail run, and I was listening to music on my earbuds when I came across a rattlesnake.
That's a surprise.
Now, the only reason I knew it was there because it reared up. It went into a defensive, position. But even there, the music came off, and I just stood about 15 to 20 feet back and was just in wonder, like, how often do you really get to see a rattlesnake in its own environment? And full respect for the snake, I just observed it until it got bored and just slithered away. So, you see the darndest things.
Wow, that's such a great moment. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no, I mean, thankfully, I saw it, and no harm, no foul. But I do take the dog, on hikes, with me. So it is my number one nightmare that I don't know how she would react. She's a little French bulldog. Gracie, you want to come say hello?
Final question. We are celebrating you, and the sky's the limit. How would you want to celebrate?
Well, I define empowerment as, or one form of definition as, empowerment is the ability to fly. Empowerment allows you to have wings and to fly. So I probably wish I could take flight. I think we all want to fly or be able to fly from time to time.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, what a great answer. Well, Scott, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank
time, for
you.
sharing these incredible stories and inspiration. It's definitely leaving me with a lot of food for thought about, you know, empowering yourself, empowering others, and thinking about how to make these connections that you've got in your running and Ironman world also come true in our singing world. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or have you coach them or whatever is available?
Since the advent of COVID, I've developed an online fitness, really just one-on-one. It's been primarily geared towards seniors, since they're a vulnerable, population, and it's been doing pretty well. I mean, it's open to anybody, but if anybody needs any help in terms of their running, I don't charge for advice. To me, it's just getting somebody, getting starting to get maybe in that particular mindset, is phenomenal. You're welcome to give out either my phone number or an email address if anybody wants to reach out with any question.
That's so generous, Scott. Thank you. And yeah, we'll be sure to put your information here in the podcast show notes. And of course, as you can tell, Scott has done the impossible repeatedly, many times over. He's an amazing person and coach. I hope that you enjoyed his story here today as much as I did. Scott, thank you so much.
Blessings, everybody. Just be safe. I mean, we've all had to really just work through ever-changing mindsets, these past couple of years, and again, I mean, there's no end in sight. So continue just to keep putting one foot forward. So
Awesome.
Vielka, thanks so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me for this podcast. To learn more about my step-by-step approach to voice education, where I've consolidated 30 years of vocal study into 4 words even a 3-year-old can do, just go to www.vielka.com. That's Vielka.com. Happy singing.